She stood in the hallway and stared silently at the suitcases, the laptop, his briefcase. They lay where she hadn't noticed them when she'd walked in. She walked back into the room and looked at the man sitting in the shadows. "You're crazy, Lyle. You're abandoning me and our two sons because of one fight. Because of one stupid mistake I made while drunk a few hours ago. I didn't have sex with anyone. I didn't betray you. You're just obsessed." When he didn't answer anything, she headed toward him, and he raised his hand again as if signaling her to stop. She stopped. She wondered if he had had an accident. This man was not her husband, was not someone she had lived with for 8 years. No one could change so drastically in a few hours. He'd never been like this before, never. And the worst part was, there was nothing to explain it. Nothing much had happened at the party. She stepped back but didn't sit down. "Can you tell me why? Can't you at least do that?" I had a moment of clarity. She heard the words, but couldn't put them into any kind of logic. A moment of clarity? Why are you doing this, Lyle? I know you think you're smarter than me, everyone in my family, everyone around you. But why can't you not rub our noses in the fact that we're idiots compared to you? Say it in words I can understand. The figure shrouded in shadow shifted her posture, tilted her head forward slightly, and seemed to rest it on her clenched fists. "I'm sorry, Diana. I really am. I didn't mean to do it that way. It's just what English literature professors think and say. It's really not that hard to explain. We, all of us, go around and around, never really understanding what the point of all our lives is. We are blinded by all the minutiae of our existence, waking up, brushing our teeth, going to work, paying bills, and what's on TV today. And the kids have colds, and we wonder if we're getting fat, and if our husbands or wives are looking at other people. We never step back and look at our lives. Except once in a while." He paused and she fell silent, hoping he would continue. "I had a moment of clarity tonight." "You keep saying that, but what does it mean? What did you see?" Even though she couldn't see his face clearly, she knew he had focused his gaze on her face. She could feel the power of his gaze on her skin. "I saw our lives, Diana. I've seen who we are, who we were, and who we've become. It has nothing to do, or very little to do, with what happened at the party. You're right. Leaving because of one fight, one mistake, one incident would be crazy. But that's not why I'm leaving. I'm leaving because I've realized that our marriage was a mistake, that I love you, but you don't love me, that I've never satisfied and probably never will satisfy you sexually the way you need me to, that deep down you're a good woman and will never leave me because you keep your promises, and that we're too young to ruin each other's lives for the next 40 or 50 years. That's why I'm leaving when we're done talking." Next chapter. About 3 hours earlier. I pulled into my driveway at 9:30 p.m. My cell phone was silent. It had been silent since I left the Rivers Trailer Park south of Palatka at 8 p.m., leaving my wife and about 75 of her close and distant family and friends to drink and dance at the monthly party that had been a tradition for most of our 8 years of marriage. We lived in Jacksonville, the urban center of Northeast Florida, with a population of 1 million, an hour and a half north of Palatka. The house was dark except for an automatic yard light with an electric sensor that illuminated the driveway as I walked, or rather limped, down it. It had been a stormy evening, and I felt much older than my chronological age of 34, more like 74. But I only had to lug a 6-pack of Michelob Lights into the house, so I managed. I turned on the kitchen light and sat down at the table where we actually ate, not in the little dining nook where we were supposed to eat. I unscrewed the lid of one Michelob and took a long sip of the delightfully cold drink, letting it slide down my throat. Then another. All the while, I waited for the first ringing tone from my cell phone. Nothing. I looked at the pictures 5-year-old Billy had drawn at school with a crayon magnetized to the refrigerator door and the picture of 7-year-old David catching his first pass in a Pop Warner Pee Wee football game. My throat caught, and I consciously fought to keep from bursting into tears as I looked at David's dark-haired young body, captured in the moment of his first athletic triumph. He looked like his mother, with her dark hair and slender figure. Both boys had their mother's dark hair, not sandy blonde, and both boys had their mother's light brown eyes, not ice blue. I fought the lump in my throat. They and their mother were my world. Until a few hours ago, I was going to lose them all, and it was like standing on the railroad tracks in the dark of night, watching for an oncoming train and being frozen to the tracks. I took another sip and leaned my head against the dark-grained wood of the table for a moment. I finished the bottle and forced myself to get up from the table. Sooner or later the phone would ring, and then the front door would open. But until that happened, I had things to do. I went up to the second floor, to the bedroom that Diane and I had shared for 5 years, ever since we'd moved to this rather expensive neighborhood in Mandarin. We moved there because the schools there weren't bad. I taught an introductory English literature course at Jacksonville University, a small private liberal arts college across town. But I liked the Mandarin neighborhood better than the area around the university, so I resigned myself to the hour-long daily commute. I opened the closet door and discovered in the depths 2 suitcases that Diane and I had used for our last cruise 2 years ago to the Bahamas. I then began opening the drawers and pulling out as much underwear as I could find. I pulled out a week's worth of pants, shirts, and jackets. I didn't forget to put in a razor, toothbrush, toothpaste, a few medications, everything I needed for a trip away from home. I leaned over the dresser and felt the urge to vomit. I fought it down. Only there was no way this trip was going to end. It was an exile from everything I loved or had loved, and I was never going back. If I let myself think about it too much, I knew I would freeze. So I very methodically started packing the things I needed to start my life over as a single man after 8 years of marriage. I found my laptop and my briefcase with the papers I needed for college. I moved everything into the hallway that led to the dining room to the left of the front door. They wouldn't be seen by anyone entering the house unless they went into the dining room. When I'd gathered what I could, I grabbed a carton of Michelob with 5 bottles of beer left in it and went into the dining room. The front door opened into a hallway that led to the right and then into the den room. I sat down in an upholstered chair at the far end of the room and set the Michelob on the glass coffee table in front of me. There was a floor lamp behind the upholstered chair, and I turned it off. There was a light on in the hallway that could have been turned on by anyone entering. I stood on the chair and loosened the light bulb in the center of the den so it wouldn't come on when you hit the switch at the entrance to the den. With everything I needed ready, I reclined in the padded chair in the darkness of what was my home, opened a second Michelob, and began to sip cautiously. Around 11 p.m., the cell phone rang for the first time. The Nokia screen lit up in the darkness, and I recognized Diane's phone number. I didn't bother to answer it. About 3 minutes later, it beeped that there was a message waiting for me. I didn't answer it. 5 minutes after that, it rang again, and then another 3 minutes later, and another 5 minutes later, and another 10 minutes later, and another 5 minutes later. Diane rang, and her father Richard, and older brother Dave, and younger sister Kelly, and then Diane again. If there were any humor left in the world, I would find the parade of phone numbers funny. But the funny had died hours ago, and I didn't think I'd find anything funny for a long time, if ever. The house phone rang, then the cell phone, then the house phone. I had just finished my second Michelob and was starting on my third. Time crawled by and, like a traitor, refused to run backwards, to let the day that had ruined my life unwind and give me a second chance. But even as I expressed this common human desire, I realized that what had happened had been brewing for more than one day, and I would have to rewind time back at least 8 years to undo the consequences, and that wasn't going to happen. Next chapter. November turned out to be chilly, but not bad. Usually this time of year, the RV parking lot and cabins at Lake Como south of Palatka were nearly deserted. So for Richard Carter, his family and friends, it was a great place to hold their monthly dance party in a quiet place where no one would complain about noise or call the police and people could relax. Carter and his wife Ricky raised 9 boys and girls, 8 of whom are still alive, And when all the kids got together with other family members, uncles, aunts, and friends, there was usually a crowd of 100 or more adults. Richard and Ricky built a pavement and asphalt company that made them millionaires by the time they were 60, and they enjoyed hosting Saturday monthly parties. There was always Southern rock, fried chicken, ribs and oysters in season, and plenty of beer and spirits for every taste. Diane and I didn't get to come every month, but we tried to be there as often as possible. Richard and Ricky did their best to welcome a Yankee stranger from the foreign state of Massachusetts into their family, even though I knew it was sometimes difficult for them to understand me and how I made a living. I didn't sell cars, fix cars, build houses, develop parking lots, or make money in the ways that everyone else in their group did. I stood in front of bored young men and women and talked about poetry, novels, essays, and other things that most members of the Carter clan understood little and cared even less about. The drinking usually began around noon. There were cabins available for those who needed cabins to sleep off the excess booze, as well as several RVs. Diane and I sent the boys to friends whose parents we trusted. They knew we could return tonight or Sunday morning. We watched their kids when they needed us. There was an old concrete dance pavilion that was used mostly only during Carter parties, and it had a loudspeaker. We ate and drank a little while people came in and started drinking. By 5 p.m., dusk had fallen. The music got louder and the drinking got more intense. Diane would walk around and talk to people, and I would stand at one of the tables, still piled high with food, and eat grapes. Sometimes I would just watch her for hours at these parties, because dancing and drinking were not my thing. Just looking at her and marveling that a stranger could come along and steal her away from the hordes of Southern suitors who wanted that body and face in their dreams. As usual, drinking, dancing, seductive women and men were not the most peaceful combination. One of Kelly's sister's old man dragged her to dance to a particularly winding tune and began entertaining her in front of everyone until her husband Billy jumped out and brought him down with a thunderous right-hand punch. Eventually, everyone calmed down, the beer flowed, and not a few minutes later the two men shook hands. The old beau got a kiss from his former lover, and Billy and Kelly went off to find a dark place to do the dirty deed they usually did at every party. The pavilion was getting crowded. Even Richard and Ricky were moving to the beat of Southern rock when I noticed that I had lost sight of Diana. When I spotted her, my stomach clenched. She was slow dancing with a tall, dark-haired man in a calico shirt and jeans. She was sprawled in his arms. Bobby Trescott was one of the men who had pursued her before I showed up at the insurance company where she was working on transferring my auto insurance to her company. For some reason, she took a fancy to a stranger with an even weirder accent, and 6 months later we were married. Bobby was never able to accept her decision. He still called and visited occasionally, and Diane insisted on seeing him as a friend, not an ex-boyfriend. At these parties, he always danced inappropriately close, touched things he shouldn't have touched, and usually made some clever remark to and about me, much to the amusement of many. I made my way through the twilight toward the two of them, watching them move together. I couldn't help but feel jealous. Diana had been drinking. Not enough to be drunk, but enough to relax and kind of snuggle up to him. I got close enough and said loud enough for them to hear, "Hey, Bobby, mind if I cut in?" Diana looked at me guilt-free and smiled lazily. "Hey, babe, I was just having a little dance with old Bobby. I promised him this dance. It's the dance from our prom. You don't mind if I finish it with him, do you?" Bobby smirked, and so I could see it as he touched her. Because of the semi-darkness, only the three of us could see what he was doing. Diane threw him a funny look and then looked at me. I tried to read her facial expression. Was she angry at him for what he was doing, or at me for letting him do it? I tried to remain calm, but it was slipping away from me. "Bobby, get your goddamn hand off my wife." His smile grew even wider. "Or what, Lyle?" Jesus Christ, what kind of a man's name is Lyle? Does that sound like a little girl's name? "Hey, Lyle, that's gay," I stammered. I hadn't been in a scuffle in 20 years. "I don't care what you think of my name. Get your hands off my wife." Diane took her hand and pushed his arm so that he let go of it. "Okay, Bobby, chill out." Why are you always acting like a jerk around Lyle? He's my husband. He's not a jerk like you. You're always trying to get him into fights because you know you're going to kick his ass. That's not fair. And Lyle, I'm not a little girl. Bobby's a little drunk, but I can handle him. I've known him most of my life. You don't have to make a scene trying to save me. Hell, I might have to save you. I couldn't believe my ears. I now knew that several couples around us had heard this conversation, and I heard giggling. What the hell did you just say? Her eyes widened, and I wondered if she'd even thought about what she'd said. Oh, Lyle, I'm sorry, baby. I didn't mean it. How the hell could you mean it? Bobby nudged her in the side. She meant that if you stick your nose in my face, I'll kick your ass and smash your face in, you damned pencil-necked weirdo. The only reason I didn't do it sooner is because she keeps begging me not to hurt you. What kind of goddamn man hides behind his wife's skirts? I couldn't help myself. The one who can count to 10 without using his fingers, you redneck asshole. The one who came and took your girl away from you without bothering. The one who made 2 kids with her. I'm not even sure you can do that. I saw the swing coming even as I felt people coming up behind us. I moved to get out of the way when my foot slipped on what was probably someone's spilled drink. I fell on my ass and hit my head on the concrete pad. Diane's brother Dave and his friend walked over to Bobby and grabbed him by both arms. I hit hard, and it knocked the spirit out of me. For a moment, I was stunned. Bobby didn't try to shake off the guys holding his arms, probably feeling that he had gotten the better of them. Richard Carter came up behind us and said in a hard voice, "Okay, Bobby, that's enough. We let you come to these parties because you're an old friend of ours, but you've crossed the line. Get out of here." I looked up at Bobby's smirking face and looked around at the faces around me. I saw smiles or desperate attempts not to smile. And then I looked at my beloved wife's serious face and realized she was another one struggling with this. She thought it was funny, and when I looked at her, she deliberately turned her face away, toward her father. "Daddy, no. Bobby just had a drink. He didn't mean anything by it. You know he and Lyle are fighting, but that doesn't mean anything. And anyway, I promised him this dance." Even Richard Carter looked at his daughter with disbelief. "Are you sure this is what you want, Diana? After what Bobby said about your husband?" She looked back at me, not smiling. "Lyle's a grown man, Dad. If he gets upset about something Bobby does, he knows what he can do about it. Right, kiddo?" I tucked my arms under me and rose to my feet. I just turned and walked away from my wife. Bobby started laughing. I heard giggles, and I desperately wanted to believe that Diana wasn't among them, but I wasn't going to turn around to make sure. As I was leaving the dance floor, Richard caught up with me and spoke as I walked away. "Son, I know you're pissed off right now, but listen to me. I know Diana loves you, whether you believe it now or not. But women. Look, sometimes a woman, even the best woman, wants to know that her man will fight for her. Maybe they don't do that where you come from, but here, a woman will not respect a man who will back down from another man's attempt to move in on her. Do what you think is right, but even if Bobby beats the shit out of you, at least fighting him will show her that you care enough about her to fight for her." I kept walking. "You're right, Richard. Where I come from, women don't do that. A good woman wouldn't encourage some cunt hound to get into a situation where her husband has to fight for her. Only if they love their husband, only if they have a real marriage. Now I'm not sure of either of those things." He grabbed my hand, and I had enough respect for him not to lash out. Maybe you're right about her lack of respect for you. I'm only her father. I can't interfere with that, but I can tell you that she loves you. Don't do anything stupid right now. Just go somewhere, have a drink, and chill out. Things will sort themselves out. Maybe. And then I left him after all. Next chapter. The driveway alley was illuminated by the headlights of a car pulling into our driveway at 12:45 a.m. I drank 1.5 Michelob and felt pretty calm. I heard car doors opening and voices. I opened the window next to the chair, even though it made the house feel chilly. But when people parked because of the slope of the driveway, unless they were talking in a whisper, they seemed to be standing next to the window, and I could usually hear every word. He's here! It was big, Brother Dave. Thank God. Son of a bitch. He's just a miserable bastard. Chill out. I know you're sober now. After showing your ass like that, just be glad he's here and not having fun with some random ponytail like most guys. Shut up. He's my goddamn husband who goes off to suck his thumb when his feelings are hurt and leaves his wife. What kind of husband is that? The kind whose wife has fun with her ex-boyfriend right in front of him, you stupid bitch. If you weren't my sister and you didn't have those boys, I'd tell him to just dump your ass and go find someone who won't humiliate him in public. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The front door opened and they walked in. A moment later, a light bulb went on in the hallway and light burst into the den. But it only penetrated the center of the room. I sat in the dark. Dave entered the den first, Diana following on his heels. He looked around and saw my figure sitting in the shadows in a padded chair. He stared at me for a moment, then said, "Hi, Lyle." "Hi, Dave." There was a seemingly endless silence. I wasn't going to be the first to speak to her. Finally, she said, "Lyle." "Diane," I said, in the same even, emotionless tone. "Are you okay?" asked Dave. "Fine, thanks for asking." "You bastard!" She shouted it like a cork popped, and she couldn't hold back any longer. "I love you too, bitch." She tensed up, and if Dave hadn't held out his hand, I think she might have lunged at me. Her hair was disheveled, her face flushed, her lipstick long since wiped off, and her white dress was wrinkled and stained with dirt. The party must have been hellish after I left. Smartass, always some smartass. You think it's funny to leave me alone, not tell anyone where you're going, just disappear. What kind of man does that? I don't know. Probably some coward too scared to fight a man who entertains his wife with her permission in front of all their friends and relatives. She had the decency to blush, and Dave threw her a dirty look. "You had us worried, kid," Dave said. "Why didn't you answer your cell phone, any of your phones?" "I didn't feel like talking to anyone." And he rubbed his chin and shifted his gaze from Diana to me. I guess I'll leave you guys to talk. It's been a long night. A hell of a long night. I'm getting too old for this shit. Are you sure you're okay, Lyle?" "I was just being polite, Dave. I'm not okay. And I don't know if I ever will be again. But that's not your problem. Thanks for getting Diane home. If it had been up to me, she could have gone home with Bobby or gone camping in the RV parking lot." He gave us both another look and then just shook his head. Then he looked at Diane. "I'll leave then, Lyle. Let you guys work it out yourselves. Diana, walk me out, okay?" "Sad." I realized from their voices that they were standing outside his Chevy Tahoe. Damn him, Dave. What an asshole he is. Any other guy would have thrown himself at Bobby or gotten drunk or done something human. And he goes off and sulks at home. He doesn't... I'd kick Bobby's ass, just like Tommy and most of the guys we know. Lyle's not like that. He's not a fighter. You knew that when you decided to go after him. You remember. I remember very well. You said he's not the kind of guy who comes home with fat under his fingers, gives you 6 or 7 kids, gets drunk every weekend, and screws you over when you put on a couple pounds. You said, and I quote, "He's a man who will get his way. He will provide for me and our children, be faithful to me, and provide a good life for us. He's a good man." You wanted something better and you got it, and now you're nervous and dancing. I used to be proud of you, Diane, but now I wonder if you're just another slut who's going to get divorced 4 or 5 times, drag home new boyfriends every few weeks, and make mom and dad cry when they think about the mess you've made of your life. Oh, Dave, grow up. I'm not stupid. I've been a mess. I played with Bobby because it felt good to feel young again for one night. My husband should have grabbed me and made me behave, but I forgot who I was married to. He's angry now, but it will pass. It was one night and one fight. I'll come to him, give him some love, and it will pass. People don't break up over one quarrel. You bet they do, sister. You think because I build houses, I don't know anything about your dear husband. I have clients and partners whose children attend JU. They talk about Lyle. He's young, he has hair, he's smart, and many female students think he's cute. There were times when an A or even a C would get him blown off. And then there were the female professors. One, let's just say she pursued him so openly that the dean had to tell her to chill out or they'd take action. So go in there and do whatever you need to do. You lose him, and he won't sit around crying into his beer for long. She came back and stood at the entrance to the den for another long time. None of us said anything. Then she started to cross the den, heading toward me. I raised my hand. Wait, get a chair and sit over there by the TV. That surprised her. I could read it on her face. She was expecting me to come over now, to lead her to the bedroom. But it didn't happen. She took a deep breath. I know. Lyle, I know I acted like complete shit in there today. You don't need to read me the riot act. Everyone else has already done it. Jesus Christ, everybody acts like you're blood and I'm a stranger. But I've been drinking, you know that. And Bobby, Bobby and I have a history. We go way back. We met in elementary school, you know? And you should know this. He still loves me. He still hasn't gotten over the fact that I chose you to be my husband. I know it's wrong, but I feel sorry for him. So sorry sometimes. And you're going to ease his pain by entertaining him? Anger flashed in her eyes. He's in pain. A little flirting makes him feel better. Nothing else was supposed to happen until you came in like a big man and started acting out. You didn't have to do that. He's a friend. And you're my husband, the man I love. After another moment, she sat down in the straight-backed chair. It wasn't the most comfortable in the world, which was what I was after. I don't want to change the subject, Diane, but I'm curious about something. I left the campground around 8, and the phone didn't start ringing until 11. I know the campground is a big place and there was a lot going on, but after that little incident, it took you 3 hours to realize I was nowhere to be found? You must have really felt guilty about what happened, since you realized that it only took 3 hours for me to disappear. I think if we hadn't had that little party, you wouldn't have realized I was missing until the next morning. That speaks volumes about how important I am in your life. Anger flashed in her eyes, and she was about to say something when she suddenly came to her senses and stopped. My God, Lyle, you don't know, do you? Know what? All hell broke loose after you left. I forgot about you. Everyone forgot for a while. But that doesn't mean I don't care about you. It's just... Enough. What happened? After, Bobby and I did a little dance. I know I shouldn't have done it, but I was so damn mad at you. I know you don't fight. But, God, it sounds like I'm 13 years old. But I was hurt that at least you didn't take a swing at Bobby. If he had taken a swing at you, I would have been there for you, loving and comforting you. I wanted that. You're my husband, but you left. So yes, I was furious. I danced with him. And you know, Bobby, he was drunk. So after a few minutes, he went to pee. Knowing Bobby, I figured he would either go to the lake or behind one of the cabins. I talked to a few people and thought nothing more of Bobby for a while. After about half an hour, I started wondering where he had gone. I wasn't worried about you because you're usually gone, and we don't meet until closer to evening. Then I heard a scream and everyone started running towards the lake. People crowded around a man lying on the ground. I tried to get closer, and then I realized it was Bobby. It was horrible. His face was covered in blood. One eye was swollen shut. I was told his arm and several fingers were broken. Dave and the others were talking to him, and I heard them say someone should call the sheriff. The 3 bikers got in Bobby's face, talking about how that old fart had ruined their party. When they started to argue, all 3 jumped on Bobby. He said some of them would be limping and sore for a while, but there were too many of them. That's when things went downhill. We called a rescue for Bobby, and the sheriff's office sent 3 cars, and they were checking the park to see if any bikers or anyone else was still there. And then after a while, they started checking to make sure everyone was in place. I took in what she was telling me, and the obvious question came to mind. And yet it took you 3 hours in total, and sometime after you knew there were some naughty bikers roaming the park to wonder where your beloved husband had gone. I repeat. I must really rank high on your list of important people. She bit her lip and didn't look at me. It hit me. You weren't at the park, were you? You wanted to go with Bobby to the hospital. You had to hold his hand, didn't you? She finally looked at me. He was pretty beat up, Lyle. He was in pain, and he asked me if I would go with him. I couldn't say, no, you couldn't. There seems to be a pattern of behavior developing. You just can't say no to Bobby. Don't do that, Lyle. It was a decent human thing to do. If you weren't so angry with me, you'd know that. Of course he was an old friend. An old friend you were having fun with before I came along. You must have been there for him in his time of need. You entertained him back then, didn't you? She looked at the floor, shook her head, and then met my eyes again. Yes, Lyle, you knew about it. We were serious back then, and I wasn't a little girl. We were having fun. Does that make you feel better? And before you ask, he was good. Very good. Does that make me a slut? What about you? Should I be jealous of every woman you've been with before me? No. That was then. This is now. Yes. He asked me to go with him, and I did. I held his hand, the one that didn't have broken fingers on it. We had an ER technician with us, and there were people around us every second while we were in the ER in Palatka getting him patched up. Nothing happened, Lyle, and even if we had been alone, mocking me would have been the last thing on his mind. You have nothing to be jealous of. Did I say I was jealous? You don't need to be. I can see it in your face every time he's around me. I guess I can't blame you. If you were always with another woman that I knew you were with, it would eat me up. Do you ever think about me? She lowered her eyes again and didn't look me in the eye. Lyle, you know that's not a fair question. So much has been going on. Bobby was hurt. Everyone was calling everyone else. So the answer is no. When and who finally started taking an interest in me? She continued to stare at the floor. Bobby was treated, and his brother came to take him home. I went back to the campground with Kelly and Billy. When I got there, Dad came up to me and asked if I'd seen you since. That's wonderful, Diane. Your father thinks enough of me to remember I'm missing before my wife does. She looked up at me, and I could see tears glistening in her eyes. Keep it up, Lyle. I screwed up, and you're going to hurt me as much as you can for what I did. Okay. Now I feel even shittier. I'm sorry. I guess your conscience is tormenting, isn't it? It's hard for me to tell because I didn't touch you. She just looked at me and lowered her gaze to the floor again. For a moment, we were both silent. Well, at least we've cleared that up, dear. She looked at me with a puzzled expression on her face. What? I stayed here because I wanted to be able to talk to you before I left. Leave. Where were you going? You're not still mad at me, are you? I looked at her, dirty, disheveled, with blood on her white dress, and thought that I had never seen anything so beautiful before. And I never would again. I have an errand to run that I've been putting off until I had a chance to talk to you. Then I'm going to find a place to stay for the night, some cheap motel, and on Monday I'll be arranging for a permanent residence and meeting with a lawyer. A place? For an overnight stay? With a lawyer? Lyle, are you out of your mind? What are you talking about? Did we just have a fight? Badly, but I love you. People don't break up over one fight. What happened to you, Lyle? We were happy this morning. What could have happened in less than 24 hours to make you want to leave me? I didn't answer her, just pointed down the hallway leading to the kids' bedrooms. Go, I said. She slowly got up and walked to the other room. I knew she would see the suitcases, the laptop, my briefcase. She came back into the room even more slowly, shaking her head like she couldn't believe what she saw. You're out of your mind, Lyle. You're abandoning me and our 2 sons. Because of one fight. Because of one stupid mistake I made when I got drunk a few hours ago. I didn't have sex with anyone. I didn't betray you. You're just obsessed. When I didn't respond, She started to move closer to me, and I raised my hand again to stop her. She backed away, but didn't sit down. Can you tell me why? Can't you at least do that? I had a moment of clarity. I could see she had no idea what I was talking about. A moment of clarity? Why are you doing this, Kyle? I know you think you're smarter than me, everyone in my family, everyone around you. But why can't you not rub our noses in the fact that we're idiots compared to you? Say it in words I can understand. She was right. I had taken my intellectual superiority over Diana and her family for granted too much. I didn't realize what an asshole I was just because I worked with my head instead of my hands and surpassed everyone in Diana's family in my education. I'm sorry, Diana. I really am. I didn't mean to do it that way. It's just what English literature professors think and say. It's really not that hard to explain. We, all of us, go around and around, never really understanding what the point of all our lives is. We are blinded by all the minutiae of our existence. Waking up, brushing our teeth, going to work, paying bills, and what's on TV today. And the kids have colds, and we wonder if we're getting fat, and if our husbands or wives are looking at other people. We never step back and look at our lives. Except once in a while. I paused for a moment, then added, I had a moment of clarity tonight. You keep saying that, but what does it mean? What did you see? I had to squeeze the words out of myself. It was the hardest speech I have ever given and ever will give because I knew I was killing our life together. Killing my life with the two boys I loved more than life. But she deserved to know why I was leaving. I've seen our life, Diana. I've seen who we are, who we were, and who we've become. It has nothing to do, or very little to do, with what happened at the party. You're right. Leaving because of one fight, one mistake, one incident would be crazy. But that's not why I'm leaving. Meh. I'm leaving because I've realized that our marriage was a mistake, that I love you, but you don't love me, that I've never satisfied and probably never will satisfy you sexually the way you need me to, that deep down, you're a good woman and will never leave me because you keep your promises, and that we're too young to ruin each other's lives for the next 40 or 50 years. That's why I'll leave when we finish our conversation. She shook her head again, and this time the tears did flow. I knew she was crying for a life that was ending, just like me. Just because she didn't love me the way I loved her didn't mean there was no love. There just wasn't enough of it. How can you say things like that, Lyle? How can you be so cruel? Look at me, Diana. Answer me 2 questions, and if I'm wrong, I'll rethink what I said. A look of fear appeared on her face, and I realized that she somehow knew what I was about to ask her. Have you ever cheated on me, baby? Have you been with another man since we got married? She fell silent. The look on her face answered the question. Thank you. That's one of the reasons I love you. You could lie or try to tell half-truths, but you're too good a woman. You can't lie and you don't want to tell me the truth, which you know would break my heart. But we both know the answer to that question. You just answered it. The silence is eloquent. And the second question. Do you love me, Diana? I love you, Lyle. How the hell can you ask me that? It doesn't matter. What? You need to know that I love you. That's not what I asked, Diana. Do you love me? I don't understand. You love your father and your mother, our boys, our brothers and sisters. I know you would give your life for them. But being loved is different. It's when you catch your breath, when you look at a man who makes your heart beat faster when he kisses you, who you dream of and want when he's not around. That's what I feel for you. I don't know if you had those feelings for me when we were married, but I know you don't feel that way now. You'd be a good sister to me, but you're not a wife. Is that all? She stood up and headed toward me. Is it really all about sex, Lyle? Is that really what it's all about? You're sorry because I'm not some slut in bed with you. I got up and went into the light to meet her. When I walked into the light, she caught her breath and backed up. Oh my God! She gasped. She stopped backing away, reached out a trembling hand, and gently touched one side of my face, her fingers gently brushing over the swollen flesh surrounding my nearly closed left eye. I knew the rest of my face was made up of various shades of yellow, red, and brown. My lips were swollen except for a piece missing from the left side. Oh my God, they found you and beat you up too. Why didn't you go to the hospital for medical attention? I tried to smile, and that in itself had to be scary as hell, judging by the look on Diana's face. You should look at the other guy. I realized from the expression that slowly made its way across her face that she understood what my expression meant. Next chapter. I stood in the dark by the lake, listening to the music and imagining I could still hear the laughter of the people around Diane and Bobby. I didn't need to go back to realize she was dancing with him. I could have gone back and confronted Bobby face to face. I'd been beaten before, back in the days when I'd been running around the streets of South Boston as a wild child without a father. I'd been beaten a lot when I was a lowly shrimp trying to stick around teenagers, until my mother finally wised up and moved us to a small town south of Boston, away from the gangs. I didn't mind a beating if it came to that, and it probably would have come to that, because I didn't kid myself that I could beat him in a fair fight. He was bigger, stronger, and undoubtedly tougher than a guy who makes a living standing in a classroom and gagging. But it was the look in her eyes when she dared to make me do something about Bobby's insults, the way she let him put his arms around her and stroke her, the way his hands roamed lightly and familiarly over her. I guess I'd always known it, but now I couldn't bring myself to ignore the truth that he was entertaining her. Somewhere, another man was occupying the center of my life, and she was sharing things with him that she would never have shared with me. How can you live when everything is built on lies? Leaning against a tree, I looked up into the overcast night sky and wondered how I could turn a life that had gone off the rails and make it right again. How to forgive a woman who has become everything to you when she gives her body and perhaps her love to another man. I wondered if they laughed at me when they were together. I heard a body stumbling through the weeds and bouncing off the trees as someone staggered toward the lake. Stopping a dozen feet away from me, facing the dark lake, he didn't even look back at me. Even from the rear, I knew who it was. I punched him. I'll be damned, Lyle. I didn't think you were capable of that, you wimp. Sure, you had to sneak up on me, but at least you had the guts to try to hit me. But now I'm gonna hurt you. Really hurt you, boy. And I'll be right, because I'll tell everyone, including Diana, how you hit me. We fought for a long time, but I still prevailed. I grabbed him and said, I'm going to ask you some questions, Bobby, and you're going to tell me the truth. He finally nodded and then said softly, You're on top, Lyle, so I'll tell you anything you want to know. But there will come a day when I'm on top, and when I do, I think you'll just disappear. No one will ever know what happened to you. Maybe, but right now I want to know how long you entertained Diana. He was silent for a moment. This time or before? I already know you've been entertaining her since we met. That is, since we got married. About 4 years. 4 years. Yes. How did it happen? How often? He smiled gloatingly, but immediately disappeared, and I believed his words. I've been stalking her since the day you married her. I tried everything, showing up at her work, just dropping by the house, playing sad, trying to make her laugh. But she would never cheat on you. It was driving me crazy. One day, about 4 to 4.5 years ago, she came up to me as I was leaving a 7-Eleven store. She wasn't smiling or flirty, but she asked if I wanted to go out for coffee. We didn't do anything that day, or for another 6 months, but she looked after me. Then one day we ended up at my house. That's when it all happened. And it's been like that for the last 4 years. Every 3 or 4 months she comes over, we have fun for a day or two, and then she comes back to your place and it's like it never happened. I tried to make sense of what he was telling me. This wasn't just a one-night stand. It had been 4 years. 4 goddamn years she'd been stabbing me in the back. Enjoying life with a guy who didn't have grease under his fingernails and provided her with a good life, and all she had to do was put up with his boring entertainment. So she stayed with me for the money? Is that it? He groaned softly and then surprised me by laughing. You're a goddamn idiot! You don't get it, do you? What don't I understand? She never needed your money, asshole. I drive a backhoe and make almost as much as you do, if you believe what she once told me in bed. And you know Richard and Ricky set it up so they could split all their money before she died. In a few years, she'll be able to buy and sell you, asshole. You're no goddamn prize in terms of money. Then why? She loves you, you goddamn asshole. Why? I'll never know. She loves me. Is that why she's having fun with you? Jesus Christ. You don't understand shit, do you? She's just bored with you. She wants to have some real fun. You can't give her what I can give her. You're the one who ruined everything. She was gonna marry me, you know? She was. Those two boys of yours would have been mine. She loved me, or she would have. We'd been together since junior high. We were the same people. We would have been happy. And then you show up with your smart mouth and your good looks and talk about things she'd never seen or imagined. And you tricked her into thinking you were the right man for her. I looked at him again. You stupid bastard. I'm the best thing that ever happened to her. You just couldn't handle the fact that I took her away from you. Yeah, I guess you're right, smartass. And look how happy it made her, and everyone else too. She tried to love you and live without fun, tried to stay in a marriage that was killing her. I lost the woman I loved and should have had. I should have been sneaking around with her and seeing her go home with you from those parties. And you poor bastard. With those words, I made sure he could never have fun again. I won't go into detail about what exactly I did, but you can believe me that he is forever deprived of having fun with the opposite sex. Next chapter. She just stared at me. He told me everything, Diana, and I believed him. People don't usually lie when you snap their fingers. Oh my God. 4 years. 4 years. Tears rolled down her face. I couldn't believe that part of me hated her, and a bigger part of me still loved her. No, baby. Maybe a little, but that's not the point. It's hard to explain. It's been like this since the very first time we did it. No other man has ever had this effect on me. It's not that, but it's the closest thing I can explain. And I think maybe if I told you that I bored you to tears. So why didn't you leave me if he was so wonderful? He wasn't. This fun with him was wonderful. I love you. I reached out and touched her face, wiping away a tear. I know you're not in love with me, but I believe you love me and our marriage. But I left the rest unspoken, walked around her and began moving my luggage and laptop into our family Saturn. I was keeping the more spacious Ford Escort for her and the kids. It took me 3 trips, but finally I was done and back in the house. She didn't seem to move from her seat. She reached out her hands to grab me, but they stayed hanging in the air. I don't want this, baby. I don't know how, but there has to be some way to make this right. Not really. Our marriage is over. I want to see the boys and be a part of their lives. But us is gone. Because you hate me. I looked into her sparkling eyes. No, I love you. That's why it's so hard. But you can't breathe life into a corpse. We can go to counseling, see a therapist, anything. We won't go because deep down you don't want to be married to me anymore. I don't think you believe anything can work out between us. How can you say that? Remember I said that silence is eloquent. Sometimes silence says more than words. I know you don't really want to save our marriage because ever since I let you know I was leaving, you still haven't said 2 things that would show me that you still need me. Those are the first things I would have told you, but they never came out of your mouth. We looked at each other, and the question was clear in her eyes. You never said, "Don't go, please don't go." When it finally came to her, she fell to her knees and cradled her face in her hands. She was crying as I walked out the door. The end. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, so subscribe to my channel and watch the next video. As I sat here reading the memo, I was reminded of memories I hoped would never surface. Amy! My ever-loving and faithful cheating ex-wife is now the head of my department. my immediate superior. What an irony of fate. I should have known something like this would happen, but I was just glad to be out of the marriage. Now it's come back to haunt me tenfold. Amy said I was a heart attack just waiting for a time and place, and she was right. My doctor warned me, but I didn't pay much attention to it, thinking that what I was doing wasn't so bad. After all, everyone works hard to provide for their family, don't they? I knew Amy was ambitious, that she had many needs and wants. Take that huge mansion we lived in, the pool in the backyard, the country club membership that dusted in a drawer of her home office that neither of us had time to use, and it was my job to provide, or so I'd been raised. The once love of my life would now be running my life again. This was the final step that brought me out of my apathy, as there was no way I could even consider working under her. Not after finding out how many men she had had, and maybe she was still working under them. I finished tucking the last pieces into the box and picked up my resignation letter, leaving the office for the last time. Tossing the letter, cell phone, car keys, and credit card on Megan's desk, I commented, "It's been a pleasure working with you, Megan. I really wish you the best. You are a very valuable employee, and I want to thank you for all your help. Take care of yourself and don't let that bitch mess with you. If she bothers you, I authorize you to use me as a threat to get a fair resolution." "So you're leaving, Sam?" "It's not just an empty threat?" she asked, waving my letter in front of her face. "Yes, Megan. You know as well as I do that I couldn't work for her. I can't work with someone I don't respect. And as you also know, with all those horrible details, she's killed any chance of me respecting her. I'm going to miss you, Sam. You know she'll be furious when she finds out you're up and gone. She's been pestering me for weeks about your workload and schedule. I didn't tell her anything I didn't need to, but I felt like I was stabbing you in the back. I'm sorry! I should have said something sooner. I smiled. Don't worry about it. You have to protect your job, and there's nothing you can say that will make even an ounce of difference. I knew what the writing was on the wall when that merger memo came in. I didn't do anything here that needed to be kept secret, as you know very well. How do I act? What do I tell her when she asks where you are? I grinned. Tell her everything you know, tell her the truth. She won't be able to tie her panties in a knot over it. Do what she wants as long as it doesn't destroy your own values. It was my pleasure, my dear. I'll keep in touch with you, I promise, I said, shaking her hand and kissing the back of it. I was just getting into the car when a black limousine pulled up to the office building, and Amy got out with two well-dressed men, looking by all accounts like a high-status, no-nonsense businesswoman. In reality, though, we all know better. She is nothing more than a highly paid escort with a title. Amy looked very professional in her business suit, however. She always looked good in any outfit. She looked around but didn't see me, which was just what I needed. I sat there for another minute or two to let her enter the building before pulling out of the parking lot for the last time. I had already settled my affairs, sold what I needed to sell, and put everything else in storage. My doctor said I needed a change of scenery, and I finally decided to take his advice. I spent the next 3 months traveling, sightseeing, and taking a break from the stresses of work. Eventually, I found myself in a small town located on this side of the void. The climate was temperate, the residents were friendly, and the fishing was excellent. I rented a small 3-bedroom cottage with a workshop annex next to the lake with an option to buy. It had everything I needed to start a new life. Sitting on the back porch, sipping a cold drink, I wondered for the first time how Amy had taken my disappearance. I decided to call Megan the next day to see how my sudden departure had been received. Hey, Megan, it's Sam. How's it going in the salt mine? Sam! It's so good to hear from you, or I was beginning to worry that you'd vanished off the face of the earth. I laughed out loud, sitting on my deck and watching the water lazily beat against my personal pontoon. Not completely off, but the view from here is spectacular, to say the least. Wish you were here. How's it going out there? Oh my goodness, Sam. You certainly know how to launch a cat amongst the pigeons. Amy was on a roll. She was going through the company like a packet of salt, and layoffs were happening left, right, and center. Kevin Paxton quit last week after a confrontation with her. I don't know what it was about, but she moved him from the logistics department to the archives department. Essentially moved him to a windowless office in the basement, and as you can imagine, Kevin couldn't stand it, so he tendered his resignation and left. I'm very sorry to hear that. Kevin was a good man, probably one of the best in his field. What the hell is this woman doing? If she's not careful, she'll sink the ship before she even gets it out of the harbor. How is she with you? I heard Megan chuckle. In a nutshell, Sam is damn frustrated. She tried to fire me that first day because I let you go before she had a chance to talk to you. Like I could stop you, and I told her so. Then she told me that since I didn't have a boss anymore, I wasn't needed and to pack my stuff and get the hell out. I stood there and told her she could try to fire me. I'm going to send you and the company to court so fast you won't have time to put on makeup before your court appearance. I told her what you said, and she shut up like it never occurred to her that her whore on top would come back and bite her in the ass. Megan broke into giggles again, then continued. So now I'm the secretary to the bitchy executive vice president in charge of operations. I guess it has something to do with keeping your enemies closer than your friends. I told her I expected a substantial pay raise along with the promotion. I guess she wasn't happy about it either because she just grinned, but in the end I got what I wanted. Megan was telling me all the latest gossip. On the one hand, I was pleased that my leaving had affected Amy's plans. Don't get me wrong, I changed my life for my own good because it was something I had to do, and Amy's appearance was the kick in the ass I needed to end my procrastination. This latest event was the icing on the cake, so to speak. Still, I was worried that it would eventually affect everyone else, and that wasn't part of my plans. The next morning I was out of sugar, so I decided to stop by a small store nearby. Their lot borders mine and there is an open paddock in between. As I exited the store, I almost bumped into a young couple, and after apologizing, I saw a severely horny woman in her early 20s standing behind the counter. Can I help you? She asked, as the baby made herself known, whimpering irritably, just as a couple of cars stopped at the gas pumps out front. The woman sighed. Where the hell is Jillian when I need her? I smiled and asked, Can I help you? My name is Sam and I live nearby. I think Junior needs to be fed and I just need some sugar. I don't have anything special, so if I can help until you're done or until Jillian gets here, I'd be happy to. Why don't I take care of the ones in there and you take care of your baby in the meantime? The woman smiled and replied, My name is Vivian, and I would be very grateful for Sam's help. I got out and took care of the travelers while they filled their tanks. I washed the windshield and generally chatted with them. And when I got back from the road and put their money next to the cash register, another customer just walked in and started looking around the store. I took the time to walk over and chat with him. What can I do for you, sir? Just looking at your choice of fishing rods, he replied. I'm on a business trip and I had to take my car in for repairs, and it looks like it's going to be an all-day job. I figured I'd do a little fishing to pass the time. I noticed he looked like a businessman, and it could have been me in his shoes as recently as a year ago. He was about to buy some cheap rods and reels, and I asked, Do you fish a lot? The guy shook his head. Not really, though I'd like to if I could find the time. I smiled. I was good at that, and then proceeded to convince him that buying something more expensive would dramatically increase his chances of catching fish and having more fun on his vacation. I dealt with a dozen other shoppers before Vivian could get her daughter in her seat after feeding her. Thank you so much, Sam. Why is it that things only get busy when you can least afford it? Bessie doesn't usually fuss at this time of day, and Jillian is always already here. I grinned. To explain it, I'd have to explain quantum mechanics, and since I have no idea what quantum mechanics is, you'll just have to make an educated guess. Maybe you and your husband should hire more reliable help. This made Vivian's face twist, and I noticed it. I'm sorry, I think I said something wrong. Please accept my apology. Vivian looked at me with sad eyes with a single tear frozen in the corner of them. Sam, it's not your fault, but I'm a widow. Vivian told me that her husband Greg was in the Army Reserves and had been killed during maneuvers. She told me that the truck he was in had flipped over and died. The worst part is that Greg didn't even know he was going to be a father. Bessie was most likely conceived the night before he left. Vivian wiped the tears from her face with the back of her palm and continued. I think he would have been a good father. He had so many ideas, and this place is one of them. Vivian waved her hand, pointing to the store and the land it was located on. Over the next few weeks, I made it a habit to go to the store and help out whenever possible. I know what you're all thinking, and you're probably right. Vivian was a beautiful woman, and my hormones hadn't been satisfied in a long time. But more than that, it gave me back my sense of self-worth. What hurt me most was the realization that Amy's infidelity showed that she didn't need me, and that she didn't think I could adequately provide for my family, and that she didn't believe or trust my abilities. That was the last insult I had to endure. I think Vivian saw my need to give back, and although she never asked me for help directly, she never refused if I offered and always remarked how much she appreciated my support. I started to feel good when we spent time together, and she was fun, caring, and grateful, which was fine with me. I was on my way home after another day's work at the store when my cell phone broke into my thoughts. Hi! You're lucky you're not Secretary Sam. You wouldn't last a day with your phone manner! A woman's voice purred in my ear. Hi, Megan, I'm sorry, but you caught me off guard for a minute. It's almost 7 o'clock at night. Do you have something urgent? Megan sobered up and stated, I had to wait until I got home to call because I don't know if that bitch boss is tapping my work phone or not, but I didn't want to take any chances. And Sam, that's exactly why I'm calling. You need to be on your guard. I'm calling to warn you. She put a private investigator on your tail. She asked me to put him on to you, and I really can't not do it and keep my job, but I figured if I warned you, you could lay low and go undetected for a while. I sighed. Has this woman made it her personal mission in life to harass me to the grave? I don't know, Sam. All I know is that she's at her limit. She spends terrible hours trying to turn this place around, and I think it's taking its toll on her. She looks 10 years older and has put on a good dozen pounds. Well, she can't be pregnant. Well, maybe she could be, but not by me anyway. I heard Megan giggle again on the other end. No! I'm pretty sure it's from overexertion. Too many comfort trips to the freezer for ice cream, I'd say. You can see it in her face and the top of her arms. She's starting to bloat. She's frantic to find you and has assigned the task to me, citing that it's my fault that you left before she had a chance to talk to you. Jesus Christ! Good! I can see that ignoring her is useless. Here's what I think you can do. Give her a week, then go to her with a fake report saying they couldn't find me, but are sure the cell phone is genuine. Then tell her you already called and convinced me to talk to her. Megan must have heard the excitement in my voice. Are you sure, Sam? I really don't feel like doing this with you. Don't worry about it, Megan. You need to look after number 1 and then you can guard my 6 like you did. I appreciate your efforts, but don't put yourself in the line of fire. A week later, Megan texted me the morning before she left for work. PH No 2 BB2 Day. Be ready for call today sometime? I saw the post and chuckled at the acronyms. BB? Bitch boss? No? No. Ooh, number? Damn these young people and their high technology. Then I thought about what I was going to say to her. Nothing came to mind, so I decided I'd cross that bridge when I got to it. As promised, the call came in. I got Amy's cell phone number and answered, Yes, Amy, what do you want? Amy must have been caught off guard by my slurred phrase and short greeting. What's that bitch my secretary been up to? I hung up. My phone rang again. Damn it, Sam. I hung up the phone again. The next time it rang, Megan quickly answered, Are you going to talk to her or not? I grinned. Tell that bitch to keep a polite tongue in her head the next time she calls, and she'll manage to get more than 2 words out. I'm sick of her trying to lord it over me. Megan chuckled. My pleasure, Sam. I'll talk to you later. 5 minutes passed between talking to Megan and the next call. Sam? Yes, Amy, what do you want? Another pause then. Can I talk to you for a minute? I'm listening. Another pause. Megan cried on your shoulder? What did she say? Megan is a very capable girl, and it doesn't matter what she said to me. That girl, your so-called secretary bitch, is the only reason you're talking to me right now, and if I were you, I'd be kissing her ass in gratitude for her help. So I'm going to ask you again, what do you want? I thought I heard a sigh. I'm sorry, Sam. I'm just a little cranky lately. I know that Megan has been doing a good job, and I appreciate it, I really do. I knew Amy was trying to diffuse my irritation, and wondered what could have made her give up so quickly. Get to the point, Amy. You still haven't told me what you want. I heard Amy suppress a small sob. I really need to talk to you, Sam. I need your advice. I thought we were going to work together here. You know, as a team, but you quit and disappeared before I could explain it to you. I snickered irritably. I saw what the writing was on the wall, Amy. Once I saw the message that your company had bought out mine, I didn't see the point in staying and being humiliated again. So now that we've sorted that out, have a happy life, Amy, but I doubt I'll see you here since I no longer revolve in your circles. Goodbye! No, please, Sam! Please listen, I really need to talk to you, but not over the phone, but face to face. I know I probably don't deserve it, but I'm begging you. Just half an hour, 30 minutes to pitch my idea, and then I'll leave it up to you. Amy was almost crying into the tube when she finished. Please, Sam, I don't know who else to turn to. I gritted my teeth. All I wanted to do was hang up the phone and forget that I'd ever gotten involved with this woman in the first place. For a long time, I struggled with myself. Okay, Amy. But I'm not going to run after you, so if you need to talk, you're the one who should meet me at my office. I'll make arrangements with Megan, and she'll let you know when and where. I disconnected the phone before Amy could answer, half expecting her to call back, but the phone never rang all night. Amy was annoyed. Why do I have to go through all this with Megan? Why can't you just give me Sam's address and let me go alone? Megan gripped the steering wheel so hard her knuckles turned white. For the last time, Amy, this is because Sam wants you to. You have to see him. He doesn't want to see you. In his words, and I quote, "My way or the highway, her choice." I don't like sitting in the car with you for hours on end any more than you do, but if he wants me to bring you, you'll have to put up with it. I have no intention of being there while you have your little get-togethers. I'll make sure I'm gone, you can rest assured. I started chopping vegetables and herbs for the Italian sauce I was making for dinner. Megan had called 30 minutes ago to let me know that it was less than an hour before they arrived, which meant they'd be here in about 20 or 30 minutes. The last thing I wanted was for Amy to feel comfortable while she was here, but if I was busy while she made her argument, it would put her at a disadvantage. 15 minutes later, I heard a knock on the front door. It's open, come in! Well, don't you look completely at home? Remarked Megan with a genuine smile. I giggled at her quips. Hi, Megan! It's good to see you too. You look good. Looking in her direction, I saw Amy standing behind her looking visibly worried. Amy! That was all I said, but noted how Megan assessed her health. At a glance, I noticed the bags under her eyes as well as her weight gain. Megan's assumption of 10 pounds may have been a little bitchy, but it wasn't that far from the truth. I'm dying for a drink, Megan countered, giving me a friendly hug and a kiss on the cheek. You're not looking too bad yourself, so the country air seems to suit you. There's wine, beer, or Coke in the fridge if you want a treat. To prove my point, I held up my grubby hands. Would you like something to drink? I cast a glance at Amy. Amy couldn't help but notice the cold tone in my voice and lowered her head slightly, realizing for the first time that this meeting was going to be more difficult than she had anticipated. Hi, Sam, and thanks, wine would be nice. Megan's right, you look good. Megan opened a bottle of white wine, poured 2 glasses, and handed one to Amy. Which way from the end of the world? I want to admire the view, she indicated with a wave of the hand she held the bottle of wine in. I'll leave you 2 alone, but remember, she said, pointing the bottle in my direction. I'm not here to bury dead bodies or clean up a crime scene, so behave yourselves. I smiled when I heard Megan say I'd fall off the edge of the ground and pointed to the back door, commenting, You won't have to worry with me. There's a fishing rod on the deck if you want to try your hand at it. Megan rolled her eyes. Not likely. I wouldn't know what to do with him even if I caught him. With those words, she slipped out the door, leaving Amy and me to chat. Take a load off and tell me why you're here. I pointed to her chair and went back to chopping herbs. Amy hesitantly sat down in the chair and looked around, trying to find a way to lighten the mood. Nice place you have here. Small, but nice. I tensed up. My irritation at her presence here was starting to come out. This isn't small talk, Amy. I turned back to destroying the basilica. Just talk it out, and we can both get back to our own lives. Amy suppressed a sigh and took a sip of wine to fortify herself. Can I ask one question? I sighed. You can ask Amy as many questions as you want. It doesn't mean I'll answer any of them, but damn it, try! Why did you leave? I turned to see Amy watching for any sign that I was about to explode. I guess she knew that over the years she had lived with me and guessed from my actions that I made a huge effort to control my temper. I dropped the knife and turned to Amy. You don't need a damn bachelor's degree in rocket propulsion to understand my motives, Amy. You're a high-ranking vice president now. You must have some brains to get to where you are now. I think you can figure it out. Amy wrinkled her nose at my account of how she'd fought her way into the company, and I could see her irritation rising to the surface. That was a low blow even for you, Sam. I'm perfectly capable of doing my job. What I'm not capable of doing is reading minds. I folded my arms and stared at her for a long minute. Amy looked like she was fading under my gaze. You're right, Amy. You're not a mind reader, and there aren't many, if any, but to be effective in a job like yours, you need to be able to read people, to understand and guess their motives. That's what a good manager does. He finds the talents of his employees and utilizes them for the good of the company. That doesn't mean he does it with malicious intent. It has to be a win-win situation. Do you really want to know what I think of you and your talents, Amy? I saw a shiver run down her spine at my question. She was sure I was going to answer, and I was sure it wouldn't inspire her confidence. But I guess she decided she needed to keep the conversation going to have any chance of getting what she needed. She squared her shoulders. Okay, Sam. I'll bite. What do you think of my corporate talents? I almost laughed out loud at Amy's pathetic attempt at teasing me and went back to cooking. You're a bulldozer, Amy. You have the finesse of a bull in a china shop. That statement took her by surprise, and her open mouth said it all. Of all the things she thought I would say, this wasn't even on the list. Bulldozer? That was all she could say for a minute or so, and then, would you like to elaborate on that statement? I smiled inwardly as I continued to chop. Yes, Amy. Bulldozer! You take the most direct path to your goal, which may not even be the path of least effort, and you don't analyze the situation. You don't look around and ask yourself who you can help, who will help you. You don't think about anyone but yourself. You don't sit back and ask yourself what is the best thing to do. You just go along, head down, and heaven help anyone who gets in your way. That is why you are in the unenviable position you are in. You have burned bridges behind you and trashed the ground before you. As I listened to my rant, I saw a tear glisten in the corner of her eye. For the first time since I'd known her, she was at a loss. No, I don't want to. That was all she managed. Her weak reply said it all. Everything I did was for Sam and me, but your ego made you overlook it. I realize I hurt you, and I've told you 1,000 times I'm sorry for that. If you just stick around, I could have let you in on my plan. You still haven't told me why you left. I tasted the sauce and added a little more salt. I saw the writing on the wall, and I'm not stupid, Amy. I know you're here to remove Deadwood. You're the man with the axe or woman, as the case may be, sent to remove the people who needed to be removed so the company could move forward, and I completely agree that it was necessary. All I've done is make it easier for you to make those decisions. I saw the anticipation in her gaze. This was what she wanted the conversation to be about. Sam Beckman, for a smart man, you sure do some stupid things. I had no intention of firing you, and if you had any semblance of intelligence, you would know that. Like I said, what I did for us. I did it so you could see all your dreams come true. That's a good trick. It tugs at my heartstrings and strokes my ego at the same time, but I never said she wasn't good at stroking. I was just annoyed that she was still stroking. I can't count the number of times we've sat in the kitchen at home with you and talked about how the fools at the top are bringing the company to its knees with their mismanagement. I believed in you, Sam. I believed in you when you said you could get the company back on its feet. Now I have the opportunity to help you turn your ideas into reality. I knew you could do it, and I worked my ass off to give you a chance. I went out of my way to tell my bosses that I could take your company to a big profit. And what did that get me? Ah! Now it's the "it's all your fault" gambit. You've abandoned me to my fate without even giving me a chance to tell you what's on my mind. I keep fighting, spending long hours doing what you say can be done. All I need is a little help from the one and only man I've ever loved. It's you, Sam. I need you. The two of us can sit back and reap the rewards of our union. I love you, and this is our future arrow. I'm not stupid enough to think we'll get back together, although I dream about it all the time. No. I see now that if we work at it, we can have a good business relationship and be happy. So, what do you say? How about we call a truce, start working, and together show them that we are a force not to be trifled with? Amy took another sip from her wine glass and leaned back in her chair. She seemed content to let me stand there and listen without interrupting. But now her fervor had died down, she'd made her point, and the next step was up to me. I had finished making the sauce while Amy was giving her speech and was now putting the water for the spaghetti on to boil, and the only thing I had time to think about were Julius Caesar's last words, "Et tu, Brutus!" Betrayal! These were the first thoughts that occurred to me when I first learned of her whoring for company and the reasons she had given. For all that Amy was very good-looking, one thought kept me on my toes, and those 3 words encapsulated her past and present actions. Good, Amy. A good manager considers all aspects and then decides on the best course of action. Let's say I buy into your so-called brilliant plan. What makes you think I can be of any use to you? Amy's eyes flashed with annoyance at my question. I suppose it was obvious to her. I've already told you that I believe you are up to the task, and that you have the credibility within the company to enlist the support, so to speak, of the soldiers. They trust you and respect your opinion. All the blocks you have faced in the past have been with upper management, and they have been swept away by my coming in as VP. I don't understand what you're saying? I smiled sadly at Amy's naivete. You don't see that your very appearance at the helm has negated my effectiveness in attracting support. But I'm not surprised! And the reason I say that is because you refuse to believe you've done anything wrong. Others see it differently, Amy. I saw the concern on Amy's face as I continued. Have you ever wondered why you have difficulty finding support for your ideas? The rumor mill has done a more than adequate job of informing all employees about your business practices and ethics, and I might add, without a word from me. A mask froze on Amy's face. I was stepping into territory she wanted to leave alone. All they see is a whore who's worked her way to the top, opening her legs to anyone who might help her climb another rung on the corporate ladder, leaving more deserving employees to scavenge scraps in her wake. They know you are the cuckold in our marriage, and it kept me from working there until I realized that I kept my dignity and their respect the day I ended the relationship and divorced you. If I took you up on your offer, I would effectively be telling everyone that everything you did was fine, and now instead of a cuckold husband, I would be turning myself into a cuckold employee. I would lose their respect and my efficiency would go straight down the toilet. Tears appeared in the corners of Amy's eyes again as I gave my negative assessment of her proposal. Her faith in her own validity was beginning to crack. I don't believe you, Sam. I've shown that I'm willing to work hard, that all I've done is take a powerful position to get the job done. I am more than capable of doing the job, or Jason wouldn't have given it to me. I shook my head, my anger and irritation turning to sadness. I realized now that Amy really did believe her own press, that her mind, perhaps for self-preservation, refused to acknowledge the truth of her situation. Did Jason come to you himself with the takeover offer, or did you push him? Amy wiped her face with the tissue she'd taken from her purse and straightened up hopefully. It doesn't matter what you or anyone else thinks. I'm not Jason's puppet. I approached him, and I have to say that he put up a lot of barriers until he let me go to the board and present my proposal. I nodded in acknowledgement. Exactly as I had envisioned, the merger happened. Exactly as I thought. Let me ask you this. Did Jason entertain you when he gave in to your desire to talk to the board members? If Amy's eyes didn't give her away right away, that sigh sealed her fate. Trying to gather her thoughts, she asked, "Why do you think that?" I grinned at her reaction to my question. Do you know why I was good at my job, Amy? I continued the rhetorical question. Ever since I can remember, I've been making profiles on everyone I meet, and before you embarrass yourself, that includes you. The problem with your profile is that I didn't consider my love for you. I foolishly assumed that since you loved me, I could trust you unconditionally. That mistake cost me dearly, and I changed your profile accordingly, because as my old grandfather told me, there's no point in getting older, son, if you're not going to get smarter. I assess people not only by what they say, but also by what they then do, and if it fits their profile, then I can work either with them or around them. Either way, I know how to make the best out of any situation. Knowing Jason's character, I don't think he cares if you succeed or not. If you fail, he'll wipe his hands of you and point to the board of directors, saying they're the ones who approved your proposal. I saw a glimmer of light in her eyes as I continued. If you succeed, He gets the credit for bringing a promising executive into a position that increased profit margins. He will win whether you succeed or not. So don't assume you have support from the top. Jason doesn't care if you're smart enough to put the boots on the right feet or stupid enough to believe you can pull off this coup. As long as you keep him entertained, he'll be satisfied. You're on your own, Amy. A little fish in a big pond, and the piranhas are hungry. Amy clutched the napkin frantically. Everything I'd said had a basis, in fact, and she must have been frightened at the thought that she was in more serious trouble than she realized. But, as was her manner, she turned a blind eye to the fact that she couldn't keep herself safe. So you don't think I can do it? I shrugged. No, Amy. No, I don't think so. I know you can't do that. I noticed the anger building up in Amy, but continued. It would be a freaking big Saturn V rocket that would launch you straight from your VP position into corporate oblivion. Where will your precious security be then, Amy? I turned away from her to calm myself down. From what I hear, all you managed to do while you were there was spin your wheels and create so much smoke that everyone else is struggling to do their jobs. I turned around to see Amy's reaction. I'll be surprised if the next shareholders' meeting doesn't announce a 25% drop in quarterly profits. But that's all speculation! You can give this charade any color you want, but it all boils down to your reasons for starting it in the first place. Let me tell you what I know and what I think. You told me you loved me and that you did it for both of us. Amy visibly shuddered under my tirade, but nodded in agreement. But by your own admission, it's all about your own safety. It has nothing to do with mine or ours. If you loved me as you say you do, you would do your best to stop me working myself to death. What did you say? I was a heart attack waiting for its time and place. I waited for her to come to her senses and continued. You didn't try, and if you did, you weren't very convincing. No, you just got ahead of yourself and put fear in your head, waiting for me to start spreading daisies. You could have threatened me with divorce if I hadn't slowed down and thought about us. I'm sure that would have gotten me thinking in the right direction, and I know your infidelity certainly did. That's why I'm here now and feeling great. I love you, Sam. I didn't want to divorce you. You didn't want to divorce me, but you were willing to sit back and let me work myself to death? Does that sound really loving? I finished sarcastically. I smiled inwardly. Amy couldn't refute my arguments and couldn't bear to look at me. I didn't mean what I said then, and I love you even now. I regret a lot of what I said to you then. My grim face must have indicated doubt. I'm also sure Amy believed what she was saying. I have no doubt that in your own way you love me, Amy, but that has nothing to do with our situation. Don't you realize that? I can't trust you now either in personal relationships or in business. I've decided to end this discussion. That's how I see it. You finally made it to the top. You have no one else to entertain you to climb even higher. You'll have to wait until Jason retires or fades into oblivion before you get in line to be CEO, and you've decided this is a good opportunity to solidify your position in the company and claim the coveted CEO position. Amy wanted to object, but I held her back. This is where your little plan to take over my old firm is going. You're taking over and seducing me into working my ass off again to feather your own nest. I'm stunned that you actually expected me to obey and follow your orders. When I kicked you out the first time, I thought it was obvious that I wasn't weak. Then I realized that it was probably my fault for setting you up to fail. I could see that Amy was struggling to stay on her feet. One minute I was saying it was all her fault, and now I was taking responsibility. You're talking nonsense, Sam. I think you're the one with it backwards. I hung my head and sighed in despair. Good, Amy. You've heard the proverb about being cruel to be kind. Now, I wasn't being kind. I was leading you down the garden path and actually had to cut you down and kick you in the cunt while you were lying there. It's cruel to be kind. But instead I went to Jason and made him fulfill his promise to make you a GP, and he did. I loved you enough to not want to see you hung out to dry even though you deserved it. I made a mistake because I made you think there was a chance I could be talked back into your arms. Your little love cards on my birthday, Christmas, and any other occasion you could think of proved it over and over again. I got up to check the sauce and added more water to the already nearly dry pot. If I did what I had to do, you'd disappear to some unknown place where no one knew you, lick your wounds and start over, hopefully wising up a little. That's exactly what I want you to do now. Just walk away and start over. The tears came pouring down in streams again. You'll have to go back to some secretarial job, but at least it won't be as bad as what will happen if you stay and try to fight it. You'll be lucky if your job description allows you to lick stamps while you're being entertained by some post office jerk at the sorting table. I watched Amy as my words reached her. I tried to speak thickly, and it made me sad to see defiance instead of humility on her face. I know I hurt you, Sam. I berate myself every day for it, but what you just said is just evil. You don't believe in me at all, and yet I believe in you. Well, if you think so, then sit and watch, and I'll show you how it's done. At that moment, there was a knock at the door. Come in, exclaimed I irritably. Is everything okay, Sam? I'm sorry if I'm interrupting. I sighed that I had lost my temper and looked at my watch, not realizing how much time had passed. I'm sorry, Vivian, please don't come in. Amy was just leaving. I glared at her and waited for her to get up. Amy looked at Vivian standing in the doorway of the living room. She was 5, maybe 10 years younger and as pretty as a picture, slender, with long, flowing dark blonde hair. I couldn't help but notice the look on Amy's face when she realized why she was here. She turned around to me. I just stared at her blankly, then her gaze stopped on the food simmering on the stove, and then came back to me. Tears began to drip as it dawned on me what this was all about. I looked over my shoulder at the dinner I was making for myself and Vivian and realized what Amy was thinking. What, you thought it was for you? I told you from the beginning that this wasn't a society gala, so don't get upset with me for inviting a friend to dinner. You and I have been broken up for years. The only reason I let you come here is to knock some sense into your stupid head. Amy jumped up with her head down and dashed past Vivian, muttering, Tell Megan I'll be waiting for her in the car. I hope I didn't make a bad situation worse. Vivian looked at the receding Amy. I'll leave and you guys will deal with it. Can I tell Jillian I don't need her as a babysitter? It has nothing to do with you. I'm glad you showed up exactly when you did. I hugged Vivian and kissed her cheek. You can put the pasta down and watch it for a minute. I have to tell Megan that our meeting is over and that she can take Amy home. When I stepped out onto the back terrace and saw Megan napping in the afternoon sunlight, disappearing behind the landscape, it occurred to me that Amy's words were true. Now that Amy was vice president, she had dislodged all the blocks that were getting in the way of my ideas, and it got me thinking, how do you like the view? It's just like you said, Sam, just amazing. Megan smiled as she closed her eyes. How did it go in there? I didn't hear any gunshots. Not very well, I'm afraid, and she's not going to back down. She's in the car now and waiting for you. Can I ask you something? Sure, Sam, you know you can ask me anything. I smiled weakly. How do you see your future at work? How ambitious are you, Megan? Megan's eyes widened at such an unusual question. I'm not quite sure what you're getting at, Sam. But if that's what I'm thinking, I'd like to get Amy's job first. She rose from her chaise. I know I can do it and do it well, but I don't intend to compromise my virtue to get it. Why do you ask? I lowered my head in thought. I think it's time to put an end to this three-ring circus. Then I spoke with grim determination. Can you hook up Kevin Paxton and meet me in town? Say in 3 weeks, because I might have an offer for both of you. Megan nodded in agreement. I led Megan back into the cottage, and she saw Vivian standing at the stove. Poking me in the ribs with her elbow, she whispered, Now I see why Amy ran away from here with her tail between her legs. You old dog! The look on Megan's face made me smirk. She's gorgeous, and I'm sure she's been the final nail in the lid of Amy's coffin. Jesus, Sam, Amy is out of her league. Never has been. Heck, I'm not even in her league. That poor girl must be licking her wounded pride right now. I nodded to Megan, appreciating Vivian's beauty. And she's just as gorgeous on the inside. Vivian looked up when I introduced Megan. It's nice to meet you. Sam seems to have so many women in his life that I'm not sure he has room for me, she said hesitantly. Megan chuckled. Don't worry about the other women you'll see Sam with. He's the only man of that you can be sure, sweetheart. And as far as I can tell, he's got his eye on your ass. You better watch your six. Sam can be a real Casanova when he targets a woman worthy of his interest. I don't know what Megan meant by that. I have not been around her in any social situation for her to make such a statement. I could feel my face reddening. I think you've said enough for one night, Megan, and it's time to leave. I was nudging her toward the front door when she looked over her shoulder and made one last salvo. If you're smart, Vivian, you won't let this guy out of your hands. Kissing me on the cheek one last time, she bid me farewell. Be smart. I'll see you in 3 weeks. Vivian and I sat at the Merlot on the back deck and watched the waterfowl swim by carelessly. We chatted about what had happened during the day, and I told Vivian all the sordid details of my marriage to Amy and the destruction she had wrought on it. You don't want to do this! Do you, Sam? I shuddered at what I was about to do. No, Vivian, you're right. I don't want to do this, but it has to be done. I can't sit back and let everyone there lose their jobs because I took the easy way out. As much as it pains me, I don't have a choice. Vivian was silent for a while, but then declared, If you must know, Amy still holds a candle to you. I looked at Vivian and almost laughed. I knew that before, but I don't think so now. Not after what I said to her this afternoon. I was tearing into her as hard as I could, but I don't think it made any difference. Vivian smiled. For all your toughness, it's obvious you care about others, Sam, including Amy, and believe me, we women really appreciate that quality in our men. I had nothing to reply to that, so I went back to devouring my beer. Vivian patted my arm to reassure me. If I'm not wrong about you, I'm sure you'll do the right thing for everyone. I nodded with a grim premonition. But I'm afraid not everyone will think so. You didn't make her bed, Sam. She did, and now she's going to have to lie in it, and there's nothing you can do about it. Vivian was silent for a minute or two, and I was deep in my own thoughts when she caught me off guard. Speaking of beds, when are you going to show me yours? To say this statement came out of the blue is an understatement, and it took me by surprise. Huh? Vivian chuckled. Megan told me that if I wanted to claim you, I'd better not stick my feet up. What did she say? If you're smart, Vivian, you won't let this guy out of your grasp. Well, that's me grabbing onto someone I think is worth holding on to. So you're interested in more than just platonic relationships? I know it sounded like I was a fresh out of high school teenager tasting the water. I didn't mean to make a mistake. As you can see, my track record with women isn't very promising. I had a hard time looking her straight in the eye when I said that. Vivian giggled. You're blushing, Sam. My ears erupted in flames of fire, and a sheepish grin appeared on my face. You sure know how to make a guy feel stupid. I rubbed my face and eyes with both hands, more to regain control of myself than to feel tired. That day when I walked into your store and saw you looking absolutely shattered and accepted my help, I felt like a knight in shining armor coming to rescue a damsel in distress. The smile on her face was priceless. You were my knight on his trusty steed that day, and you still are. Vivian leaned over and kissed my cheek affectionately. From that day forward, I have depended on you. Now I understand why you've taken pity on me all these months. Vivian stopped, seeing the look of confusion on my face. It must have been hard for you when Amy showed you weren't needed? Well, if it's any consolation, I need you, Sam. I haven't been this comfortable and relaxed since Greg died. Yes, it's a man thing. Amy didn't understand it, and I couldn't explain it either. Vivian patted my arm to reassure me. You've been good to me, Sam, and I want you to know that I appreciate it. It wasn't until Megan committed her misdemeanor that I realized I had more than just friendly feelings for you, so what do you say? Do you want to take it to the next level? Vivian's face reflected sincerity mingled with hope. Well, madam, if you insist, I shall have to show you my etchings, I finished with a sly grin. Vivian's face lit up. To hell with the engravings. I'm more interested in what tool you use to make these etchings. We both burst into laughter as she stood up and headed for the door, saying, Race you to the bedroom. I saw Kevin and Megan watching me walk into the restaurant. My look must have said everything about my mood. Kevin stood up and held out his hand. Long time no see, old friend. So good to see you after all these years. What are you doing to yourself? You look 10 years younger. I smiled, taking Kevin's hand. It's good to see you again. I'm totally fine. How's life? Ooh, average to average. Can't complain because no one ever listens. I smiled at Kevin's words and kissed Megan on the cheek. You look as radiant as ever, my dear. I don't know what you found in that brute, but I hope he treated you well. Megan chuckled. He may be rude, but I like the rugged type. How do you know? I smiled. Because like I told Amy, I'm a people watcher, my dear, and I saw your reaction when I asked Kevin to be here today. I think you two would make a formidable team. Kevin grinned at my assessment. Speaking of which, what kind of offer do you have for us? I chuckled. Always from the hip, Kevin, you'll never change. Okay, business first, and then we can relax and enjoy the food. As the waitress served us our drinks, I began my speech. As you know, the company is in dire straits, and if nothing is done soon, everyone will be looking for work elsewhere. As you and I have already found out, there is not much choice here. I pulled several folders out of my briefcase and held out the white one to Kevin. If you disagree or have anything to add, feel free. While Kevin studied the folder he was holding, I opened a second one. Here's a list of people you need to get on your side. I'll leave it up to you how you do it. Kevin flipped through the folder he already had in his hands. It's obvious at a glance that you've thought this proposal through very well. As far as I can tell, not only are you going to attack JPL and Amy, but Dobson Inc. and Jason as well? I saw the look on Kevin's face and realized what he was thinking. We don't have a choice, Kevin. Since Dobson bought out JPL, we'll have to attack from both sides. My original ideas were all about JPL. Now we need to focus on Dobson's board of directors if we want to succeed here. If you can get the board on your side and Megan can do her part for JPL, then we have a chance, albeit a small one. Kevin handed the folder to Megan. You're not kidding when you talk about Sam. Skinny is still an understatement, more like anorexic, but I can see the possibilities. I think it wouldn't hurt to pass it on to Jack Deacon, though. He's quite a man when it comes to counting beans, don't you think? I thought for a moment, then nodded grimly. I know he's a genius when it comes to beans, but if you think he's the one we need? After all, he and I didn't get along. I don't know exactly why, but he just let me know that I wasn't his favorite colleague. Megan nodded, looking through the folder. I agree with Kevin. Jack needs to get involved. When it comes to creative accounting, he's just a master. I'll talk to him and listen to him first. Kevin picked up the second folder and began to read, looking over the list of names. I'm not sure I could meet some of them, let alone invite them aboard. I smirked at Kevin's doubt. What do you think I've been doing for the last 3 weeks? There's one name out there, Slovak. I haven't been able to get close to him, and if he's not on board, none of this makes sense. How in heaven's name did you become so influential? Influential, damn it! If I was that good, Slovak would be eating out of the palm of my hand. I handed Kevin another folder. This is a list of meetings you have scheduled with everyone but Slovak. Megan looked up from the folder she was reading. Isn't Slovak Jerry Cambridge's uncle? Maybe he can get an appointment with him? Kevin and I looked at each other and shrugged, and Kevin asked, Is there anything you can figure out and organize, sweetie? Megan smiled. I have a meeting with Jerry tomorrow about the itinerary and plans for the upcoming trip. I'll ask him then. This information made me feel a little better, and I finished. I took the liberty of organizing the times and dates on your behalf. Shit is starting to smell even in the higher echelons of government. I outlined my concerns, but at that point, I didn't have a workable plan. For this one, I brought in a bunch of markers. There's still a lot of detail work to be done, and I think we need to get everyone we can together to finalize the final version. Megan shook her head. I can't believe Jason didn't see all this happening. Ooh, he knows it's going to be okay, I scoff. I think he just doesn't care. He's gotten a scapegoat, and Amy's in for a horrible surprise when he drives a knife into her back. Megan wrinkled her nose sympathetically. Amy may be a selfish slut, but I don't think she deserves to be hanged and quartered like that. I nodded in agreement. I believe he'll have to act before the next quarterly stockholders meeting to have any chance of staying clean. So we must act now and do it surgically fast, neat, and clean. Impress the big shots and we'll be home and hosed. Kevin shook his head. You seem to think we're going to take you up on your offer. I smiled again. Come on, Kevin, think about it. What do you have to lose? If Amy was able to pitch them her ideas, it'll be a walk in the park for you. You haven't found another job that matches your abilities, have you? I know you have a beef with Amy. I'm also pretty damn sure Jason is definitely not on your Christmas list. I nodded to Megan. And that little minx seems to believe in you as much as I do. I'm sure you'll take the piece between your teeth and run with it. Hell, I've already done all I can do, and all you have to do is bring home the bacon. Kevin laughed along with Megan. All tied up with a neat pink ribbon, he stated sarcastically. Megan frowned. What about Jason? He's not giving up without a fight, and I'm sure he has the support to destroy this ship before he can even get the first shot off, she noted, looking through the second folder. I wrinkled my face in an evil grin. Leave that bastard to me! You won't even see him, let alone deal with him. All you have to do is keep Amy busy so she doesn't realize what's going on and do something stupid like commit professional suicide while destroying everyone else. A smirk appeared on Megan's face. She's the last of our worries. After your conversation the other day, she has her head so far down that she doesn't know what day it is. Vivian stung her, and she's vowed to prove you wrong. I can tell you, Sam, you really messed with her head. I've had to interfere with a lot of her proposals to head office just to make her look a little competent. Kevin, Megan, and I enjoyed our meal while discussing our plans. As we said our goodbyes, we arranged to meet again in 2 days with other people to discuss the final version. The meeting was heated, to say the least. Megan and Kevin had gathered a half-dozen conspiratorial friends to help bring the puppy home. Jack Deacon was just one of them, and as I predicted, Jack was hostile from the start, though he sat and listened to what we had to say. Let me see the financial packet, he demanded, and we all waited, breathless, as he ran his finger across the page, amazed at the speed with which he could add and subtract. This is utter nonsense, Beckman. There's no way you can substantiate these numbers. I looked at him, and my first reaction was to fly off the handle at his negativity, but I replied, managing to contain my anger. They're just estimates, projected approximations. Deacon smiled sarcastically. Don't quit your day job, Beckman, and I've seen more accurate weather forecasts from the Weather Bureau. It's time to put up the money. I told Amy I knew my way around difficult people, and it was put it out or shut up time. Listen, Deacon, can I call you Jack? I know we haven't seen each other since Amy unconventionally took over, but I know you're good at what you do, and that's why you're here. You're the best there is. I could see his chest heaving, and I was sure I was on the right track. Jack grinned understandingly. I may seem like a mere laborer to you, but I'm not so socially inferior that I don't understand being patronized. I gritted my teeth in annoyance. I know that sounded patronizing, but it doesn't make my words any less true. I looked around the room, addressing everyone present. What are these people going to do when the next shareholders' meeting rolls around? I myself don't give a damn whether you agree with this proposal or not. I can leave and go back to my life out of town, and let you guys go back to figuring out how to get in line for unemployment. You're a genius when it comes to numbers, Jack. You're in a position where you can get a job on short notice. But what about them? We need you to do your thing, get creative, and make those projections work. I could see the gears turning, and aside from a feeble attempt to indulge his conscience, he looked concerned. So this isn't some scam to move your wife up the corporate ladder? I smiled sadly and grinned, shaking my head. So that was his claim on me? No, Jack, definitely not. She's my ex-wife, and she'll be lucky to shuffle papers in some dark, windowless room if we ever manage to pull this off. I made a mistake when I divorced her. I should have burned the bitch, but I didn't, and I regret where it led. I'm here to try to right that wrong. Whether this takeover works or not, both her and Jason will be a thing of the past. I guarantee you that, Jack replied, looking around the room and then looking through the folder once more. You know, Sam, I've been doing so much and so little for so long that now I have the full opportunity to do everything with nothing. He looked up with a grin, a mile wide on his face. What's the deadline for this miracle to be ready? I looked at Kevin. I need it by 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, he replied cautiously. Holy shit, he snapped back with bulging eyes. I'm fine, Kevin, but I think even God would have a hard time sorting out this mess by then. We all looked at each other, and I started to worry that my brilliant plan might just go down the drain. What he said next threw me, and likely everyone else in the room, into confusion. I want a sign on my desk that says God if I pull this off, joked Deacon. After a moment's thought, Kevin grinned. I'll personally engrave it, and everyone will kneel at your feet and pay their respects if you bring me those figurines by 3 o'clock tomorrow. Everyone present, including me, breathed a sigh of relief. Okay, folks, we're burning the midnight oil. Call whoever you need to apologize to and get to work. Megan came up to me and asked if I could invite some of the girls from the typing group to do collation and gophering. It's your choice, Megan. Show us what you can do. I'm only here to help with any questions you might have, but it's up to you now. I explained, holding out my hands to show that I was handing over control to her. Oh my God, she exclaimed, glaring at Kevin. Sam's right, honey. You need to pull yourself together and show everyone that they can rely on you in a crisis. Kevin and I stood back as Megan took a deep breath and got to work. Within an hour, she was already busy organizing groups and brainstorming ideas from those who had them. Jack argued with her until she snapped, I don't care how many of your guys you have to bring in to meet the deadline, Jack. You know what we're up against, so just do it, okay? Kevin chuckled. I think you were right, Sam. She is a little hard worker. I smiled at how Kevin was obviously proud of his little ball of fire. I slapped him lightly on the arm. I never doubted it, Kevin. Saying that, I tapped my index finger on my temple in agreement and set off to help. I entered Jason's office and walked past his shocked secretary. I'm sorry, sir, but you can't go in there. Jason looked at her in disgust and waved her away. It's okay, Lynn! What does this Beckman invasion mean? It was obvious that Jason was more than a little upset that I was standing in front of his desk again. That's no way to start a negotiation, Jason. I would have thought a man of your caliber and business acumen would know when to be a little more contrite. There was a mask of menacing ingratiation on my face. Jason sat back and waited for me to continue. I, on the other hand, didn't need to bother letting him think about what was coming next, knowing full well that in a battle of wills, the first one to speak was the loser. Jason finally interrupted, small beads of sweat running down his forehead. Are you just going to stand there all day staring at me, or are you going to tell me why you're here? He finished with a nervous glance at his watch. I have a shareholders meeting in an hour. I'm here to help you pack, asshole, I finally informed him. And where am I supposed to go? It was obvious that Jason didn't like the way this confrontation was going at all. I don't care where you go, as long as you're out of here by the end of the day. I curled my lips in a grin. But I think you should go to another state. To the other side of the country. What if I have no intention of going anywhere, asshole? I'm only a couple years away from retirement, and I have no intention of giving up my lucrative retirement package for someone like you. I shook my head. You have two choices, asshole. You can get up, hand in your resignation, and walk away with what you have in your pockets and nothing more, or you can stay and watch me take your pathetic life apart brick by brick. That includes your family life, and as far as I've been able to find out, you'll be lucky if you have enough money left over to buy a cup of coffee. Jason frowned. I did what you wanted, Beckman. I gave Amy a chance to be vice president, and as you know very well, she now controls JPL. So why are you suddenly making threats? It's no secret that we've never met, but I was always under the impression that you kept your word. So what changed your mind that you're bringing back the past to come after me? I leaned forward and placed both hands on his desk so that his face was only a few inches from mine. You changed my mind, you son of a bitch! I was keeping my end of the bargain until you went and broke it. Now you're paying. You screwed Amy in more ways than one. You let her stand in front of the board and lay out her proposal, even though you knew it was doomed to fail. You saw a chance to kill two birds with one stone. You knew she would turn to me for help to turn the company around, and you knew damn well I wouldn't help her. So you broke our agreement, and now I demand payment in full. Sweat trickled down Jason's face as he listened to me. Everything I was saying was true, and he must have been perplexed as to how I knew he'd set her up. I didn't break our deal, Beckman. She came to me. I did nothing more than give her a chance to prove herself. If anyone is to blame for her being in this position, it's her! Don't bullshit me, you low-life scumbag, I said, sweeping some gizmos off his desk with my left hand in anger. You had every chance to get her to back off. Hell, it's clear to even a moron with a fifth-grade education that without you, she had no chance of getting in front of the council members and making a fool of herself. Pointing a finger in his face, I continued. It was your choice, and you made it wrong. Now it's up to you to make it right. You resign or sit back and enjoy having your life completely ruined. Jason's face reflected a whole scene of emotion, and I was enjoying the concert immensely. I stood my ground and watched him go through his options. I highly doubt you have the necessary data on me to do what you're threatening to do. I was tickled to watch as he mentally tried every door and found it securely locked. Do you really think I've been sitting on my ass for the past few years? Not only do I have all those low-down affairs you were involved in before you ruined my marriage, I've dug up others over the years. Corporate fraud and embezzlement, not to mention two. It was just a bluff. But I figured since he was so corrupt, it wasn't unreasonable to assume he'd have more irons in the fire. Choice, Jason. Jail or retirement? I watched his eyes dart around the room as it dawned on him that the only door I'd left open for him was his office door, and it was waiting for him to leave. Kevin Paxton is talking to your board of directors at this very moment, and he has a prospectus that will turn your world to shit. And when I leave here, I'm going to head straight over there and hand everything I've got over to your cuckolded ass. That was it for poor Jason, and he pressed the intercom button. Lynn, come here with a pad and pencil. I need to type a letter right away. I walked over to his wine cabinet and poured myself a scotch. You don't have to stay, Beckman, you win. I'll be gone by the end of the day. I was sipping my drink when Jason's secretary walked in and sat down at the desk to take dictation. No problem, Jason, buddy. I don't have anything urgent at the moment. I'd be happy to drop off an email for you. Lynette could feel the tension in the air as she waited for Jason to start dictating to her. By the time he was done, she could barely contain her laughter and quickly walked out of the office. I saw her reaction and knew that Jason would not have time to gather his personal belongings and leave the building. At parting, I called out to him as he left the door of his office for the last time. I hear the weather is nice at the South Pole this time of year. I'm sure I have no desire to look for you there. Oh, and Jason, have a good day. Lynette returned a few minutes later and put her arms around my neck. Thank you, Mr. Beckman. Thank you so much. I recoiled back in confusion. Wait, lady, what am I being thanked for? Tears came to Lynette's eyes as she calmed down. Jason tried to blackmail me. He's been hitting on me. So far, it's only been hints, but I think he was planning to increase the pressure if I didn't come forward. I can't tell you how much I appreciate what you've done for me. I was furious that Jason had gotten away with it. I was right. Amy had served her time, and Jason was looking for a replacement. I decided that perhaps Jason had finally decided his fate, and now his marriage was in jeopardy. If all goes according to plan, he will only ask you to do your job as best you can. He is a fair and honest man who values the loyalty of his employees. Lynette gave me another kiss on the cheek. You're now forever on my Christmas list anyway, and I'll try to talk my husband into naming our next son after you. She grinned. Thanks again for your help. She held out the envelope to me. I must say that never in my life have I had so much fun typing a letter as I did this time. I walked into the same office Jason walked out of 6 months ago. Good morning, Lynn. Is the boss home? Good morning, Mr. Beckman. Yes, Mr. Paxton is expecting you. And as I reached for the door, she finished, Mr. Beckman? You were right. He's everything a secretary could want from a boss. Thanks again. I grinned as I opened the door. My pleasure, Lynn, and call me Sam. Mr. Beckman was my father, I grinned. Lynette chuckled and waved at me. So how does it feel to be the CEO of one of the most profitable companies in the stock market at the end of the last quarter? I asked, sinking into one of the comfortable office chairs. Sam, you old bastard! Where the hell have you been? How the hell are you doing? I can't tell you how much I appreciate what you've done for everyone here, especially Megan and me. She still pinches herself every morning to make sure it's not a dream. I raised an eyebrow interestedly. Ooh, really? And how do you know that for sure? You mean you wake up next to her? Is there a mini-merger planned here? Joked I. Kevin shrugged. Right now we're still in the negotiation stage, but a deal is likely in the near future. I'm sure Megan would love to have you come to the signing. And from what I hear, you have a little filly you're nursing as well? I burst out laughing. Same thing, and that's exactly where I was. You had a business to save, and I had a business to build. Vivian certainly has a good upbringing, a fine thoroughbred if I've ever seen one. I must admit that if I ever get any chance, I'll hitch my wagon to her." Kevin leaned back in his chair as our cheerful banter subsided and asked with a more serious expression, "Have you heard about Amy?" I felt my face grow solemn. "Yeah, Megan called me the day she was taken to the hospital. I guess the whole thing had gotten too much for her, and she just lost her temper. Megan asked if I would go that day to see how she was feeling and maybe fix a couple bridges. I didn't see the point of that, at least not until she got professional help, and my being in front of her would only make her worse." Kevin nodded and shrugged. "Yeah, you're probably right. I think Megan felt a little sorry for her, but then that's a woman for you. I think she's going to offer her an entry-level position at JPL, maybe something like a secretary. I hope that doesn't offend your sensibilities." I shook my head, frowning. "Hell no! I don't hate her, and to tell you the truth, I don't even like her anymore. She's just a person I once knew, and I hope she gets better and moves on with her life." Kevin leaned back in his chair. "So no desire to come back? I can find you a good job with a great financial package." I grinned. "Not on your life, buddy, and besides, you don't need me from what I hear. You've got God working for you now." Then Kevin burst into laughter. "Oh yeah!" I almost forgot about Jack. He got his plaque and the respect of everyone who works here. "You were right! He is a true math genius. I have to admit that for a while he was a hotshot, and I would literally walk into a board meeting an hour before the shareholders meeting when he handed me the financial report from our prospectus." Kevin lowered his eyes and started giggling. "What's so funny?" "I was just thinking about the way Jack looked when some girls would sneak up on him and stare at him. We'll see how socially bankrupt he is when he tries to figure out women with his math formulas. If he succeeds, then I'll believe he's a god." I burst into laughter. I would have loved to be there. Besides, I would have loved to attend the board meeting as well, but I had more unpleasant business to attend to. Just as you were grooming the board members, poor Jason was sweating at the very table you now occupy. Kevin's smile was hard to ignore. "Same thing, if you ever need a job, let me know." I shook my head again. "I have what I want now. Vivian and I have opened and launched our little family resort. I'm here to offer you corporate rates for Thanksgiving weekend. I thought maybe you could have some good-natured contests and promote team building?" Kevin nodded approvingly. "I think we can come to an agreement. Perhaps a fishing contest or two will foster camaraderie." Epilogue. Vivian and I were invited to Kevin and Megan's wedding, and they now have 2 wonderful boys. They are still a team to be reckoned with in the business world. At Christmas, we get cards from Lynn and his family. She also talked her husband into naming their next child after me. Her name is Samantha, short for Sam. Jason hasn't been heard from since his wife dumped all his clothes on the lawn and turned on the sprinklers. Jason's Elvis autographed guitar turned into a necklace for his favorite little garden gnome after Nancy dropped it on his head. I assume he hunts penguins in Antarctica to keep warm, but don't tell me that. It's just a rumor. And Amy? After getting the help she needed to get over what Jason had done to her, she accepted Megan's offer of an entry-level secretary girlfriend job. She sold the ridiculously luxurious mansion, leaving her with enough money to buy a modest apartment within walking distance of work. She'll never be part of an elite business environment again, but she has her own home to pay for, even if she has to work to support herself until retirement. I talked to her at the corporate Thanksgiving party they had at the lake. She was a little reluctant to come until Megan convinced her that she needed to unwind a little. We chatted for a bit and she apologized for her arrogance and admitted that she was out of line. I also apologized for ruining her safety, but I didn't see how I could do without jeopardizing everyone else's jobs. She told me that after therapy she realized how stupid her thinking had been. I was pleased to hear her laugh when I told her about Jason's departure. I think she had a relaxing weekend and spent most of it sunbathing with her coworkers. I don't know what her social life is like. Megan told me that she occasionally goes on dates with some girls, but rarely stays there for long. Truth be told, I don't have time to even think about it, let alone care much about it. It's her life she created and she has to live with it. 6 months later, Vivian and I were married and moved her and Bessie into my cottage. I watched as she took the picture frame with her late husband's photograph out of her suitcase, stood looking at it for a moment, then kissed it and placed it carefully in one of the drawers of the dressing table. The gesture moved me, and I walked over to her and, while she looked at me uncertainly, pulled out a picture of Glory and placed it on her dressing table. I think Greg deserves to see his wife happy, well-groomed and loved, don't you? Vivian smiled and tearfully hugged me. You're a good man, Samuel. I think Greg and you would be the best of friends. My guardian angel has been working for me for a long time. I am so lucky to have not one, but two people in my life that I can confidently say they are my soulmates. I felt good. No, I felt splendid. Better than I had felt in years. When Bessie is old enough, you'll have to tell her all the lovely things about her father. I think they both deserve it. Our little fishing resort is expanding more and more. Jillian now has an apartment attached to the store. Not that she always makes it to work on time, but at least we know where to catch her during peak periods. We have consolidated our holdings and added more cabins with their own docks for weekend fishing enthusiasts. I spend most of the day in my workshop doing routine boat repairs and just general housekeeping. Vivian still runs the store, and Bessie is getting more and more underfoot. She's 5 now, and I'm a father figure to her. After all, I'm the only father she's ever known. We gave her a surprise last summer, her own little brother to mess around with. Brady has at least temporarily relieved her of our custody, and I have to admit I fuss over both of them. And my doctor. He's happy too, so remind me to send Amy a nice little thank you card to mark the occasion. No, I'm just kidding. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. So subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.